I want to tell you a story that'll sort of give context to my being here and my work with UN Women.
London, January 27th, 2026. The British monarchy faces what insiders are calling the most calculated attack in modern royal history. And this time, the target isn't who you'd expect. In a week already saturated with headlines that have dominated international news cycles, a royal scandal of unprecedented proportions has just erupted, drawing shock, condemnation, and immediate strategic responses from inside Buckingham Palace. What happens when desperation meets ambition? When a former royal, stripped of privilege and drowning in failed ventures, decides to weaponize the one thing she has left. Secrets, real or fabricated? The royal family just found out, and their response has been nothing short of extraordinary. Multiple high-level sources have confirmed an allegation so shocking it sent Buckingham Palace into crisis mode within hours. Meghan Markle has allegedly attempted to blackmail the British royal family using falsified footage, targeting 22-year-old Lady Louise Windsor and her boyfriend, tech investor Felix Clamp. Let that sink in for a moment. A young woman who has spent her entire life serving quietly, loyally, staying out of the spotlight, suddenly thrust into the center of a manufactured scandal designed to force open doors that were permanently closed. The timing was deliberate. The strategy was ruthless. The response was unprecedented. This bombshell dropped just 48 hours after Netflix quietly suspended Meghan's upcoming documentary series, citing what they carefully termed as content integrity concerns. Simultaneously, 3 top-tier staffers resigned from the Archewell Foundation, including the chief strategy officer and head of legal affairs, fueling speculation of internal collapse. The walls were closing in on Meghan's crumbling empire, and what happened next would reveal just how far someone might go when cornered. But here's the question everyone's asking. The question that's been trending across social media platforms from London to Los Angeles. How desperate do you have to be to threaten a 22-year-old woman who has done nothing but serve her country with grace and dignity? What truly stunned royal watchers worldwide was the emotional toll this alleged blackmail attempt has taken on Lady Louise Windsor herself. According to palace aides who spoke on condition of anonymity, Louise has reportedly gone into complete media blackout, suspending her social media accounts and canceling all upcoming public engagements, including a much-anticipated joint appearance with her mother, Duchess Sophie. The young royal, known for her discretion and quiet loyalty to the crown, found herself at the center of a storm she never asked for, never deserved, and certainly never saw coming. The ultimatum that changed everything. According to exclusive legal briefings from a legal intermediary close to the matter, Meghan issued her demands through a confidential email sent on January 23rd to a representative of Princess Anne's security liaison team. The email, carefully marked as private and time-sensitive, reportedly included a clear and chilling ultimatum that would set in motion one of the most dramatic confrontations in modern royal history. The message was direct and unmistakable in its intent. Unless the royal family restored her access to VIP security protocol, reinstated patronage privileges, and authorized public support to correct what she termed defamatory narratives, Meghan would proceed with her own public corrections, including unreleased footage involving Lady Louise Windsor and her companion, Mr. Felix Clamp. The footage referenced in this threat is now believed to be a doctored video portraying Felix Clamp in what appears to be an illicit rendezvous with an unnamed individual. The video, according to sources who have reviewed a private briefing on the matter, is extremely convincing to the untrained eye, but has been deemed synthetically generated with clear intention to mislead. Forensic analysis would later reveal it to be manipulated using advanced deepfake technology, the kind that can create seemingly authentic footage that never actually occurred. Think about that for a moment. In an era where artificial intelligence can fabricate reality with frightening accuracy, someone with resources, motive, and apparent malicious intent just tried to destroy an innocent young woman's reputation to salvage their own crumbling empire. But they picked the wrong family to threaten, and they severely underestimated the protective instincts of the women who would rise to defend one of their own. The alleged threat gained a very public dimension when excerpts from Meghan's pre-recorded interview with U.S. podcaster Talia Rowe were leaked ahead of the planned March 1st podcast premiere. In the footage that quickly circulated across social media and news outlets, Meghan smiled tightly before stating something that sent chills down the spines of royal observers. There are people in that institution, young women even, who have been protected for far too long while others were sacrificed. Maybe it's time the world sees what happens when the mask slips. The chilling subtext sent royal commentators into overdrive and sparked immediate speculation about who exactly Meghan was targeting. Within hours of the leaked footage appearing online, the hashtag #ProtectLadyLouise trended globally with over 130,000 tweets posted under variations of the theme. A viral post by former royal correspondent Georgia Klein captured the sentiment perfectly when she wrote that this is no longer about Meghan versus the firm. This is now a targeted smear campaign against Lady Louise. And if this isn't blackmail, what is? The crumbling empire behind the threat. Why would Meghan Markle resort to such desperate measures? The answer lies in the wreckage of what was once positioned as a revolutionary new brand of modern royalty. Sources close to Archewell reveal that Meghan has been desperate for institutional relevance as brand deals waver and public sentiment turns increasingly hostile. A scathing article published just last week in The New Yorker titled "The Sussex Collapse: Power, PR, and the Fall of a Duchess" alleged that Meghan's deal with Spotify fell through due to serious concerns over narrative control and her inability to deliver content that met their standards. Meanwhile, her children's book project with Penguin Random House has been frozen indefinitely, with publishing insiders suggesting that the market appetite for Sussex-related content has evaporated almost completely. But the financial pressures go far deeper than failed book deals and cancelled podcasts. Security costs are mounting at an alarming rate, creating a financial burden that sources say has become nearly unsustainable. A declassified financial review reveals that Meghan and Harry's annual security budget exceeds £4 million, with multiple unpaid invoices now flagged across 2 California-based security firms. These aren't small amounts being discussed in private negotiations. These are substantial debts that have real consequences. And according to those familiar with the situation, the pressure to find new revenue streams has become intense. UK security analyst Philip Wesson put it bluntly when he said that she's boxed into a corner and she's trying to leverage the only thing she has left, which is access to institutional secrets and reputational explosives. But there's something even more revealing about Meghan's desperation, something that explains the timing of this entire scandal. Leaked contract documents between Goldwire Studios and Archewell Audio reveal a devastating contractual clause that has put Meghan in an impossible position. The clause specifies in clear legal language that failure to deliver the 4-episode podcast series by March 15, 2026, including at least one segment addressing personal narrative reform, will result in immediate clawback of advance payments and reputational mitigation penalties up to $3.8 million. Translation: if Meghan doesn't deliver drama, if she doesn't create content that generates headlines and controversy, she doesn't just lose future income. She has to pay back money she's already spent. She wasn't just desperate for relevance, she was contractually obligated to cause chaos, to create scandal, to manufacture controversy where none existed. And in that desperation, she made a calculation that would prove to be catastrophically wrong. Princess Anne. The Iron Lady responds. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, has built a reputation over decades as perhaps the hardest working member of the royal family. someone who values duty above all else and has zero tolerance for manipulation or games. Known for her steely discipline and her unwavering commitment to protecting the institution she serves, Anne immediately convened a late-night meeting with the royal household's legal and intelligence teams the moment she became aware of the threat. Palace insiders say that Princess Anne's stance was crystal clear from the very beginning. There would be no capitulation to blackmail under any circumstances. If Meghan released the footage, the palace would pursue full civil and criminal prosecution, globally if needed, using every legal instrument at their disposal. Anne personally ordered a rapid forensic audit of the alleged video materials, bringing in experts from multiple disciplines to examine every frame, every pixel, every piece of metadata. High court barristers were mobilized and a comprehensive legal strategy was developed within hours. A source close to Anne revealed something telling about her approach to this crisis. She's not angry in the emotional sense, this source explained. She's surgical. This isn't about emotion or personal feelings. It's about protecting the institution and defending an innocent young woman who has done absolutely nothing to deserve this kind of attack. Anne has always operated with military precision, and this situation would be no different. She saw this not as a personal affront, but as a direct threat to the crown itself, and she responded accordingly. But Princess Anne didn't act alone, and this is where the story becomes even more compelling. What emerged in the days following the initial threat was something royal observers had never quite seen before. A united front of senior royal women who came together with a single purpose. Duchess Sophie, Lady Louise's mother, issued a terse but powerful private memo to royal advisors that left no doubt about how seriously she was taking this threat to her daughter. "This is no longer a feud," Sophie wrote. "This is a direct threat to the character of a young woman who has done nothing but honor her family." Sophie immediately canceled all her own engagements to be with her daughter at Bagshot Park, providing round-the-clock emotional support while simultaneously instructing private investigators to trace the origin of the doctored video. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine coordinated closely with both Anne and Sophie, preparing a comprehensive reputational defense strategy that would unfold over the coming days. One insider described the trio as a united front of protective maternal strength and institutional strategy, a combination that would prove absolutely devastating to Meghan's plans. The Windsor Firewall, a masterclass in crisis management. During an emergency summit held at Windsor Castle, an event that was given the internal code name Triarch 1C to signify its priority level, the atmosphere was described by sources as emotionally charged but strategically cold. King Charles, recovering from his private morning briefing where he had reviewed the evidence and signed emergency directives, had authorized this closed-door summit with only one instruction. "Sophie will lead," he said. "Her daughter is under attack. Give her full latitude." The decision to put Sophie at the center of the strategic response was both symbolic and practical. This was about a mother protecting her child, but it was also about demonstrating institutional unity and resolve. Sophie had arrived directly from Bagshot Park with Louise, who was visibly pale and silent, shielded by palace aides, and kept far from any possibility of press exposure. Princess Catherine reportedly reached across the table and placed her hand on Sophie's in a gesture of solidarity and support. "She won't be alone in this," Catherine said with quiet determination. "We fight as one." Then Sophie stood, and according to everyone present, the room fell completely silent. "She's threatening my child," Sophie said, her voice steady despite the obvious emotion behind her words. "That isn't PR. That isn't podcast content. That is psychological warfare, and we will respond to it as such." It was Sophie who proposed what insiders are now calling the Windsor Firewall, a comprehensive, three-layered containment plan that would become a case study in modern crisis management. The first layer involved preemptive legal injunctions designed to halt distribution of any falsified media across all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. The palace legal team worked through the night preparing documentation that would be filed simultaneously in multiple jurisdictions, creating a legal barrier that would make it nearly impossible for Meghan to release the doctored footage without facing immediate legal consequences. The second layer was a carefully orchestrated counter-narrative media operation. Catherine and Anne would quietly visit a children's hospital in Oxford the very next day, with Louise included in the visit, projecting an image of continuity, dignity, and unity that would dominate the news cycle and shift the narrative away from scandal and toward service. The third layer was perhaps the most sophisticated, a digital dossier that was given the codename Felix 7, containing comprehensive metadata proof of the video fabrication, which would be submitted to 3 major press watchdogs and Ofcom within 48 hours. Sophie concluded the presentation of her plan with a line that would become legendary among those who witnessed it. "Meghan wants shock value," she said. "Give her silence and law." Nothing starves narcissism faster than being ignored while simultaneously being legally dismantled. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Rather than engaging in a public war of words that would only feed the controversy and give Meghan exactly what she wanted, the palace would respond with institutional power, legal precision, and a public display of unity that would make Meghan's allegations seem not just false, but pathetically desperate. King Charles draws the line. At precisely 7:45 in the morning, King Charles III, still in his Balmoral wool robe and having barely slept, received an encrypted morning dispatch from the Royal Legal Advisory Group. The subject line was stark and unambiguous. Actionable evidence: potential malicious deepfake attempt by Duchess of Sussex. Charles had immediately summoned Lord Alistair Pembroke, the Lord President of the Privy Council, to his private study at Clarence House. According to a source who was present in an adjacent room, Charles reviewed the evidence in complete silence for nearly 20 minutes before saying only one sentence. But it was a sentence that would change everything. "This is no longer about Harry," the king said as he signed the emergency directive. "This is institutional sabotage. Act accordingly." The document King Charles reviewed that morning, known internally as Brief LX42B, was a comprehensive analysis prepared by a joint task force that included the Royal Media Integrity Office, the Queen's Council on Digital Forensics, and even MI5's Psychological Threat Evaluation Unit. The brief outlined 5 major risks that the palace now faced: the deliberate use of synthetic media and deepfakes to fabricate scandal, targeted character destruction of Lady Louise Windsor specifically designed to trigger public mistrust, strategic release windows that were clearly aligned with Archewell's financial deadlines, manipulation of court sympathy designed to revive Sussex legal leverage, and the monetization of slander under the protective cover of podcast, journalistic freedom, and U.S. media law. The report concluded with an assessment that was chilling in its directness. The Duchess of Sussex may be engaging in coercive media warfare to extract institutional leverage and public sympathy, regardless of veracity or truth. Following his review of this brief, King Charles authorized the reactivation of something called Emerald Shield, a legacy palace protocol that had been designed years earlier for containment of exactly this type of reputational threat. The protocol included multiple components working in coordination: royal image takedown enforcement that could remove damaging content from platforms within hours, cross-jurisdiction legal action spanning both U.S. and UK legal systems, counter-narrative content production partnerships with trusted media outlets, and digital forensic tracing of edited media assets to identify their origins. Clarence House also instructed royal legal teams to explore both civil and criminal remedies against any distribution partners who knowingly hosted maliciously manipulated material. The message was clear: the palace was no longer playing defense. They were going on the offensive, with every resource at their disposal. Operation Blackwing, the digital counterattack. While Meghan's team in Los Angeles was scheduling her podcast episode for internal testing and preparing for what they assumed would be a triumphant release, the British royal machine had already activated something called Operation Blackwing. This was a rapid response digital campaign that had been years in development, designed specifically to undercut media threats before publication by shaping the narrative in real time across multiple platforms simultaneously. The trigger for Blackwing's activation was the combination of the fake video leak targeting Lady Louise's boyfriend, combined with Meghan's direct demands to Princess Anne, demands that included diplomatic passports, VIP protections, and reinstated royal privileges as if she had never left the institution. One source familiar with the operation explained the palace's thinking in stark terms. She tried to use a threat to negotiate her way back into the crown's ecosystem, this source said. Instead, she triggered a full-spectrum media firewall that had been designed for exactly this type of attack. The Duchess of Cambridge's communications director, Thomas Everhart, quietly instructed a carefully selected network of verified digital influencers and royal family allies to preemptively shape the conversation online before Meghan could control the narrative. Key hashtags were launched at precisely 8 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, time to catch both UK morning audiences and American late-night social media users. The hashtags Protect Louise, Royal Integrity, Stand with Sophie, and Digital Defamation all began trending simultaneously, creating the impression of organic grassroots support when, in fact, this was a highly coordinated institutional response. By 8:30 GMT, Protect Louise was the #1 trending topic in both the United Kingdom and Canada, and royal commentators including Emily Thornwell from the BBC, Hugo Caro from ITV, and Naomi Phillips from The Telegraph were all circulating carefully worded reports suggesting that Meghan's upcoming podcast may contain falsified material involving a royal family member. The coordination was remarkable and highly effective. Royal fans flooded Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok with side-by-side comparisons of leaked footage and identified metadata errors. Many of them supplied with technical information from anonymous sources that were clearly connected to the palace's forensic teams. This wasn't a spontaneous uprising of public opinion, one digital analyst observed. This was a coordinated interception of Meghan's narrative before she could even fully deploy it, and it was masterfully executed. The corporate exodus and financial collapse. As the online backlash accelerated and public sentiment turned decisively against Meghan, corporate sponsors began pulling away with a speed that surprised even seasoned PR professionals. Most notably, Oasis Apparel, which had been promoting a capsule collection associated with Meghan's brand, placed the entire line under review and removed all of her imagery from their website homepage overnight. Ritual Wellness, a supplements brand that had been linked to Archewell's podcast team and was planning a major March wellness campaign featuring Meghan's participation, paused all promotional activity pending what they called a review of partnership alignments. Even Spotify's European team, which had significant financial investment in Meghan's podcast series, reportedly froze all advertising spots for the podcast trailer, pending a comprehensive review of the alleged defamation content. Multiple companies issued subtle but telling statements about their commitment to responsible media partnerships, a clear signal that they were distancing themselves from Meghan without explicitly naming her. The financial implications were staggering. Industry insiders estimated that Meghan's brand equity, which had already been declining, lost an additional 17 percentage points in approval ratings within just 72 hours. Marketing firm Credo Group released a report showing that Meghan's approval rating in Q1 2026 had plummeted to just 23% among UK and Canadian audiences and only 31% in the United States, representing a catastrophic collapse in public support. A leaked email from Spotify's UK team captured the corporate mood perfectly. "We will not promote any episode with unresolved legal implications involving non-consenting public figures," the email read, "especially minors or royal family members." The message was clear. Meghan had become toxic to brands that needed to maintain public trust and couldn't afford association with scandal, manipulation, and alleged blackmail. One executive from a major clothing brand that had been in negotiations with Archewell spoke on condition of anonymity and was brutally honest. "We can't associate with reputational volatility of this magnitude," this person said. Meghan's risk profile just changed overnight, from controversial but marketable to simply radioactive. Louise reclaims her narrative with grace and strength. At 11:45 GMT, in what would become one of the most powerful PR moments in recent royal history, Lady Louise Windsor made a surprise public appearance accompanied by her mother Sophie and Princess Catherine at the Oxford Royal Children's Hospital. Louise, wearing a soft blue coat and appearing composed despite everything she had been through, greeted pediatric cancer patients with genuine warmth, spoke gently to families going through unimaginable challenges, and posed beside Sophie and Catherine for photographs that would quickly sweep UK media and trend globally within hours. The symbolism was impossible to miss and absolutely deliberate. This was not a young woman cowering in fear or hiding from manufactured scandal. This was a royal doing exactly what royals do, serving with dignity, grace, and an absolute refusal to be defined by someone else's desperate lies. The narrative had been completely reclaimed in a single morning. Louise was no longer the target of scandal in the public imagination. She had become instead the symbol of quiet royal strength, of dignity under fire, of the fundamental decency that people still wanted to believe existed in public life. That night, the Daily Mail ran a front-page headline that captured the mood perfectly. "They stood for her. Windsor shut down smear campaign." The message resonated across traditional and social media alike. This wasn't just about defending Louise's reputation anymore. This had become a cultural moment about standing up to bullying, about protecting the innocent, about refusing to let lies and manipulation win. At 1400 hours, Greenwich Mean Time, Kensington Palace issued what many legal observers called an extraordinarily aggressive legal notification. Co-signed by three of the most prestigious royal legal firms in Britain and reportedly reviewed at the highest levels of government communications security. The notification stated in unambiguous terms that any broadcast of manipulated content tied to Lady Louise Windsor, Felix Clamp, or their private lives would trigger full legal escalation under the UK Royal Defamation Act of 2024. The palace further announced that they had obtained technical proof of image falsification and metadata corruption that was directly traceable to a California-based media contractor with documented past ties to Archewell's media department. The notification concluded by confirming that Princess Anne and Duchess Sophie have been granted full institutional and legal support to pursue independent legal action if they chose to do so. This wasn't just a personal threat anymore, one cybersecurity advisor noted publicly. This is now being treated as a digital security violation. The Crown is approaching this exactly as they would treat attempted reputational espionage against a member of the royal family, and they're using every tool at their disposal. The gloves had come off completely, and the palace was making it absolutely clear that there would be serious, lasting consequences for what Meghan had attempted. The podcast Disaster and Public Rebuke. Despite mounting pressure from every direction, despite legal threats and collapsing corporate support, Meghan made the decision to release her controversial podcast episode early, under the title Royal Truths: Power, Protection, and the Price of Silence. Running 58 minutes long, the episode was promoted by what remained of her media team as a courageous re-examination of royal structures and a necessary conversation about accountability and truth. But behind the veneer of self-empowerment and speaking truth to power, critics quickly noted that the episode walked a razor's edge between victim narrative and what many characterized as outright reputational sabotage. The most chilling moment came at minute 36, when Meghan's voice took on a particular quality that body language experts would later describe as calculated softness designed to make aggressive statements sound reasonable. "Sometimes," Meghan said in that carefully modulated tone, "silence isn't protection, it's complicity, especially when young women are being protected from truths they don't know they're part of." Though she never named Lady Louise Windsor or Felix Clamp directly, the veiled reference was unmistakable to anyone who had been following the story, and the intent was absolutely clear. This was a threat disguised as social commentary, an attack wrapped in the language of justice and truth-telling. Within 20 minutes of the episode going live, royal family lawyers filed an emergency injunction with Spotify's European Union headquarters in Dublin, alleging intentional reputational targeting through what they termed suggestive language and indirect narrative manipulation designed to create false impressions. By 1300 hours Greenwich Mean Time, the backlash on social media had reached extraordinary levels. The hashtag #ExploitavePodcast topped Twitter trends across the United Kingdom and Canada, with tens of thousands of users expressing outrage at what they saw as a calculated attack on an innocent young woman. The BBC and Sky News both issued breaking news alerts noting that the palace may pursue legal redress over suggestive podcast content, and Spotify's internal legal team held an emergency meeting to determine whether the episode had breached contractual good faith clauses. What was perhaps most telling was the comment section on Meghan's official podcast page across multiple platforms. The comments weren't just negative, they were scathing in their assessment of what she had done. Dragging a young woman's reputation through coded storytelling isn't journalism. One highly liked comment read, "It's a hit job, and everyone can see exactly what you're doing." Another comment that received thousands of approvals asked the question many were thinking: why does Meghan always imply and never provide proof? Because if she actually named names and made specific claims, she'd be sued into silence, and she knows it. At 1900 hours, Greenwich Mean Time, in what would become one of the defining moments of this entire crisis, Princess Anne and Princess Catherine delivered a rare joint video address filmed at Windsor Castle. The two women stood shoulder to shoulder in the formal setting, and what they delivered was what many royal commentators immediately called the most powerful royal rebuke delivered in decades. Princess Anne, firm as steel and looking directly into the camera, spoke with the authority of someone who has served the crown for over 70 years. "When the integrity of a young woman under our protection is manipulated to serve someone else's redemption arc," Anne said, "we are duty-bound to respond, not with spectacle, but with truth, and with the full weight of the institution behind us." Princess Catherine followed with words that carried their own quiet power, the kind of resolve that comes from someone who understands exactly what it means to be targeted by false narratives and reputational attacks. "Lady Louise Windsor is not a plot point in someone else's story," Catherine said with absolute clarity. "She is not a pawn to be moved around a board for strategic advantage. She is a young woman of character and dignity. And she is not afraid." The image of Anne and Catherine together, united in defense of Louise, was immediately picked up by every major UK newspaper and news outlet. This was institutional power on full display, a clear message that the monarchy would protect its own with every resource available. The final verdict and lasting consequences. That same afternoon, in a move that was clearly coordinated with the palace response, Duchess Sophie appeared on ITV's Afternoon Outlook program to speak not just as a member of the royal family, but as a mother whose child had been targeted. Her voice wavered slightly at first as she began to speak, the emotion of the situation clearly affecting her, but then it grew firm and steady as she found her strength. There is a line between media freedom and personal cruelty, Sophie said, and that line was crossed, not just crossed, but deliberately trampled when my daughter became collateral damage in someone else's campaign for relevance. Sophie confirmed publicly for the first time that Louise had listened to the podcast episode and had been hurt by what she heard, but emphasized that her daughter was not shaken in her commitment to service and duty. She ended her interview with a line that would be quoted extensively in the days that followed. "You don't become a royal by marrying one," Sophie said, looking directly into the camera. "You become a royal by defending one, by standing up when someone under your protection is attacked, by putting duty and decency above personal advancement." At 16:45 GMT, Buckingham Palace released what many considered the final nail in the coffin of Meghan's credibility. A comprehensive forensic report had been conducted by a third-party digital media laboratory in Brussels, one of the leading facilities in Europe for detecting manipulated media and deepfake content. The analysis confirmed with 99.2% certainty that the alleged video of Felix Clamp was a deep fake that had been generated using altered footage from a 2024 charity gala. The technical analysis showed that the audio layer had been synthesized using advanced AI voice cloning technology, and the metadata revealed clear evidence of manipulation that had occurred on January 22, 2026, just 3 days before Meghan's initial demand letter to Princess Anne. The report's conclusion was damning and unambiguous. This wasn't journalism or legitimate investigation, the forensic team wrote. This was engineered slander, created with malicious intent to damage reputations and extract leverage. On March 6th, in what represented a significant corporate retreat from association with Meghan, Spotify issued what they carefully termed a partial retraction and content advisory regarding her podcast episode. The statement, which was clearly written by lawyers and had been negotiated extensively, read that following feedback from multiple stakeholders and formal legal correspondence from concerned parties, Episode 1 of the real narrative would now include a mandatory disclaimer and would undergo audio editing to remove potentially defamatory inferences and suggestive content. Insiders report that Meghan was absolutely furious about this forced modification but was contractually bound by clauses she had agreed to and had no legal basis to resist the changes. One producer who worked on the project stated off the record that she played the royal card one too many times, and now she's finding out that the deck was rigged against her from the beginning. The palace, meanwhile, announced a series of moves that signaled not just victory in this particular battle, but a comprehensive reimagining of how young royals would be protected and empowered going forward. Lady Louise Windsor, the young woman who had been targeted for destruction just weeks earlier, would receive her first full-time royal patronage, and significantly, it would focus on youth media ethics and digital security, turning her personal experience into institutional change. Felix Clamp, completely cleared of all false rumors and with his reputation restored, would co-host a major summit on artificial intelligence and reputational safety, scheduled for May, bringing together technology experts, legal scholars, and policymakers to address the growing threat of deep-fake technology. Princess Anne ended her final public comments on the matter with a line that has now been etched into the public imagination and will likely be remembered as the definitive statement on this entire affair. We didn't just defend a name, Anne said with the quiet authority that comes from a lifetime of service. We defended what it means to be royal in an age of digital warfare, and we sent a message that will resonate for years to come. You can attack us with lies, but we will respond with truth. You can try to manipulate public opinion, but we will trust in the fundamental decency of people to see through manufactured scandal. And you can threaten the innocent, but you will face the full institutional power of the crown in response. The question now, the question that royal watchers and media analysts are asking across the world, is what does this mean for Meghan Markle's future? For the monarchy's approach to modern media threats? For anyone who thinks they can weaponize lies and manipulation against institutions that have survived and adapted through centuries of challenges? The answer seems increasingly clear. You can threaten, you can manipulate, you can attempt to fabricate scandal from whole cloth. But when you come for the innocent, when you target the defenseless simply to save your own collapsing brand and failing ventures, the crown doesn't just defend. It responds with centuries of accumulated institutional power, legal expertise, and strategic communications capability that can dismantle your credibility before you even realize the battle has already been lost. Meghan Markle walked into this confrontation thinking she held leverage, thinking that threats and manufactured scandal would force negotiations and concessions. She walked out of it realizing she had just declared war on the most strategically powerful family on Earth, and they had won decisively before she even understood what was happening. The Sussex brand, already damaged and declining, may never recover from this catastrophic miscalculation. And the monarchy has sent an unmistakable message to anyone else who might consider similar tactics in the future. We will protect our own. We will use every legal and institutional tool at our disposal, and we will not negotiate with those who threaten the innocent.